Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 19th episode of the TRVL Photography Podcast. It is the third or fourth time that I've tried to start this video, and I'm getting there. So happy to welcome Nick Page to the pod. Good buddy of mine. We've known each other for a long time. We were traveling together in Antarctica earlier this year, and I've wanted to get him on the pod since I had the idea of starting this because the first episode was with Mike on the ship in Antarctica. So he's known about this for a while, but enough talking from me. I'm your host, Greg Snell. This is Nick Page. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's snowing outside, so it must be winter time here in Eastern Washington. It's about time to go camping because when the weather gets bad, that's when I like to actually go out and camp, and because all the tourists go home, and so it's perfect camping weather because it's snowing. I'm doing well.
Good. Yeah. For those who don't know, Nick lives in Walla Walla, Washington. It's like the eastern part of the state, and it's kind of I don't want to say remote, but like, are you closer to like Montana?
So I'm really close to the Oregon border. I'm like 5 miles from the Oregon border.
Yeah,
I can't say that word. But this area is kind of well known for being the Palouse region. So if you've ever heard of the Palouse, it's kind of like the Tuscany of Washington State, where it's rolling hills of wheat and stuff. And I grew up here being incredibly bored by it, but I couldn't really see the beauty in the area that I live in until I picked up photography later on. But it just looks like a bunch of wheat fields to me.
Well, your photos make it look a lot nicer than that, but we can dig into that because I do want to learn more about Walla Walla and how you got into photography and that you're still living there. And I knew it was close to one of those states. So you're only 5 miles from Oregon. That's super close. So,
and like, I don't know, like 70 miles from Idaho. So it's very much the southeastern corner of Washington State.
Right.
And it's usually pretty arid down in this part of the state. Like when people think of Washington State, they think of Seattle and, the Olympic National Park and, rainforests and ferns and stuff. This part of the state is like sagebrush and it's very arid, but Walla Walla is kind of in the foothills of the Blue Mountains, so it's not quite as arid as the rest of the state.
Yeah, you guys got a ton of snow right now, so you're going to take out your truck and go winter camping. Nice.
Yes.
Also, for those who don't know, Nick has a pretty sweet kick-ass vehicle. What are you driving right now? It's all kitted out, so...
It's a Colorado ZR2, Chevy Colorado ZR2, which is like the off-road edition. But then I did all the mods. It had to have a bumper and a winch and a lift kit, and I've got a rooftop tent and a canopy and diesel heater and like all the fun stuff.
Yeah, it's perfect for winter. So yeah, get out there, man. Okay, let's talk about Walla Walla and like you growing up. So. Are you from Walla Walla, Washington?
From a little town close to Walla Walla. And when I say little town, I mean a town of like 2,500 people, something like that. So a tiny little town. And I grew up there and moved away several times. In a previous life, I was married to a Navy girl, and I got drug around, like lived in North Chicago and Southern California, and lived in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington, and I've kind of moved all over the place, but I was always from that little town. That's kind of why I'm like rough around the edges. I think most people, when they look at me or meet me for the first time, they can kind of smell the small town on me. I don't look like the world's most metropolitan person in the world, but I've always enjoyed smaller towns and kind of space to roam.
Yeah, true. Yeah. So what is the population of Walla Walla? What are we looking at?
So Walla Walla is the big city, and so we have about 30,000 people, something like that. So it's big enough to have all the stuff you need, your Home Depots and your Starbucks and things, but you can still get out of town in like less than like 10 minutes. Yeah. 10 minutes you can be out in the country and be away from light pollution and things like that.
Yeah, that's great for photography, especially for landscape photography. So, I guess for those who don't know you, like, how would you introduce yourself as a photographer? Have you ever thought about that? Like
Yeah,
I would
I
say
would,
you're a landscape photographer, but sorry.
yeah, like I would say, like I'm most drawn to like storms and like interesting, impactful, energetic photography. So, I love photographing storms. I love photographing seascapes where there's a lot of water movement and energy into in the image. Um, and honestly, like when I started photography, I didn't shoot any of that. I didn't get my start in photography until much later in life, but these days I gravitate mostly to images or types of photography that have a sense of moment or a sense of movement or a sense of energy to the frame. So a lot of times that's like, a storm with a lightning bolt or a seascape with crashing waves or a lot of water flow. That's kind of my favorite type of photography.
Or those birds that you photoshopped in on the coast.
No, see the birds you don't Photoshop in unless the camera couldn't capture it.
I'm fucking with you. I got it. I get it. All right. So I want to go way back actually though, before photography. So, I mean, you just dropped casually that you were married in a previous life. When did you get married the first time? Is that Zane's mom?
No, so
Oh shit. You were
man,
married before that?
yeah. So I've lived several lives.
Can tell by the
So
color
like
of your goatee.
yeah, exactly. Like it's not obvious at all. But like yeah, previous life. At a young age, I uh, girlfriend goes in the Navy. You know, uh, absence makes the heart grow fonder. I think I love her. I moved to Chicago and proposed to her, and turns out to be an awful decision, and have a really unhappy marriage for like a year and a half. But got to see a lot of the world. Well, not a lot of the world, but a lot of the country
US.
because of it. Got to experience a lake effect winter in North Chicago, and then we moved to the Mojave Desert for a summer down by Death Valley. And all of this is like long before photography. That was back in my musician days. So back in the day, I was like,
Which I also want to talk about.
yeah, like the drums in the background, if you're watching the video, are from a previous life. I used to be a drummer in a metal band. This is all that's left is my beard. But back in the day, my band used to play in quite a few shows, and we used to play in Battle of the Bands and do little local tours and stuff. Like we were this close to getting signed, but didn't. But yeah, back in the day, I used to be really into music.
Right. And was that part of the marriage? Like, were you sort of a drummer at
No,
that time? No. So the
no.
drumming came afterwards.
Yeah, so the drumming, I guess, came afterwards. So like, yeah.
Well, how did the marriage fall apart? What
Oh,
happened
just
there?
because she was a terrible person.
Okay.
Just we weren't meant for each other. Just wasn't right. Yeah, it just was people getting married that shouldn't have gotten married, I guess.
How old were
When you
you?
get what was I? 19, 20,
Wow.
21? 21. Yeah, and I was only married for like that year and a half, and it was just a setback more than anything. And then I moved back home after all of that, and that was when music kind of got started. And honestly, like my life didn't get started until after that, because when you're following someone else around and you're not really working on yourself or building your own life. You're
Your
just
own
kind of getting
journey.
packed around. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. All right, so you're back in Walla Walla. You find music. I mean, you're an absolutely incredible drummer. Still to this day,
Mhm.
you got a ton of talent. I love seeing the kit behind you, so it shows that you obviously still enjoy it. And
Yeah.
for those who haven't heard you play, like, is it possible to look it up on the internet? What was the band called?
Yeah. Like we had our first album, it's still on Spotify. The name of the band is Livevel. So it's Livevil. And the name of the album is The End of Ideology. And it's kind of like, I don't know, Pantera inspired metal, or like maybe a little bit of Slipknot inspired metal. It's a little rough around the edges. Like that wasn't my favorite album that we did, but it's what's online.
And is this like
And
early 2000s we're talking about?
yeah, that would have been, well, it was probably 2006, somewhere in there, seven, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you really have lived
Pre having a kid.
yeah, that's maybe where we go next. But you really
Yeah.
have lived a ton of lives. I kind of knew that, but one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the pod is because I don't know the details, and I'm super
Yeah.
happy that you're comfortable sharing this stuff because
Yeah.
it really is really interesting, sort of the how you fell into photography. Because obviously you're artistic. I mean, one of the things that was really interesting about talking to Michael Shainbloom is he said that he's been doing artisty stuff since he was a kid, you know, like playing with
Yeah.
Play-Doh and trying to draw and paint and music and whatnot. So would you say that music came naturally to you, or did you have to learn? Like, how did you pick up the drums?
So it didn't really come naturally to me. I was always interested in music. Like my dad was always the type of person playing music really loud as he drank. so my childhood was full of a lot of really loud music in the living room, and I think that interest kind of came down to me, and then started playing music in like God, elementary school band and stuff like that. And then I was always the drummer in the high school pep band and all of that. So all throughout high school, I started playing music, and I was always the drummer. And drums were really the only cool instrument. You know, what are you going to do with a trumpet? Except 90s, I guess you could be in the ska band or something, or maybe if you were into jazz, you could play in a jazz band or in an orchestra, but drums were cool. And so I guess that's how I got into drumming, is it was the cool instrument, at least in high school. And then just kept going with music afterwards, played in like college jazz band and played in a whole bunch of different bands. And really, I think, I don't think that music it came naturally to me, but I've always had like this obsessive quality to where whatever I'm interested in, I obsess about. I like, when I'm not doing it, I'm researching it and reading about it, and like I just completely surround myself with whatever my interest is. And so, for a long time it was drumming and music, and when I wasn't playing drums, I was like buying, back in the day you could buy cassette tapes of like drumming tutorials that from your favorite drummer, and you'd watch that. And I did that for a long time. I went to school for a very short time for audio production, and because I knew that I wanted to be involved with music in some way, and I've always been kind of more of the technically minded type person. So I got into recording bands, went to the Art Institute of Seattle for that audio production, but I was only there for 1 quarter before I lost my financial loan. And so that kind of stopped. But then I came home and recorded bands in the local area, worked a 9 to 5 job, played in a band, and I did that for quite a while.
Okay. Okay. And when you say moved home, were you living with like mom and dad, or your parents in the
No,
picture?
just back in the local area.
Okay.
So like I lived with mom and dad until I was like, well, until I moved away chasing a girl.
Mhm.
And then I came back, and very, very short periods of time I would live with mom and dad, but I was out on my own, working a day job and doing all that stuff.
And did your parents live in Walla Walla?
Yeah. Well, not Walla Walla. It's a little town called Dayton. It's the
Okay.
little town, the
Right.
little 2,500 person town.
And dad had a high school, Dayton?
Uh, yep. Yep. Graduating class of like 40 people. Huge, huge, thriving metropolis.
Yeah, probably a great football team,
Oh,
state
absolutely.
championships.
Yep.
Okay, wow. So you got into music, you tried to go to college for audio production,
Yep.
and I guess that didn't work out because of student loans.
Yeah, so it was one of those things where like I come from a very, very poor, low income family.
Okay.
And so I was relying heavily on financial aid that I qualified for because I was poor. And then my mom co-signed for a loan with me. And I went to the Art Institute of Seattle for audio production. I was like 3/4 of the way through the first quarter, top of my class. I was in audio club, straight A's. And then I get called into the office, and it turns out that mom had been denied for her portion of my loan. And they're like, "Do you have any other co-signers?" And I was like, "No, I don't." And they're like, "Bye." And then,
Wow.
and that was just it. I couldn't pay for college. And Art Institute of Seattle at the time was a very expensive college. And dude, I was so heartbroken because like I had found my thing, like there's nothing worse than finding the thing that you're good at, the thing that you love to do, and then being told that you're too poor to do it. And so like had to go home, had nothing but debt to show for it, super depressed, just went back to work and kind of gave up on being able to do it professionally. But I still was able to record bands with my little cheap setup. I still have like some audio paraphernalia.
I was just gonna say, man, like how the cookie has crumbled over the next 25 years. Like your audio is just fantastic. Like the mic, the sound quality for everybody listening to this is like it's crystal clear, dude. But you've always been that way. You've always, ever since I started watching your videos, I was like, man, this guy's audio is so good. And like the Photoshop tutorials that you made, I remember thinking like, man, this is like really, really nice to listen to. So
yeah, it's because I have that audio background. Like the audio has always been, I guess, important to me, except for the very early YouTube videos. They had terrible audio, but it was just because I couldn't afford the good stuff yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember Gavin was also into audio for a long time. Hey, he made like jingles and stuff. That was his job for quite a while before YouTube.
That was one of the things that he and I could actually talk quite a bit about, is because we both were audio nerds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that shows that experience, even though it was, taken away from you, helped shape a portion of the work that you do today. And I mean, we're benefiting from it just listening to this. So,
well, and awesome. One of the funny things is like in that 1 quarter of audio school that I went to, one of the classes that I took was called Design for Media. And basically it was just it was basically like a composition 101 class, and I didn't know it. And I was interested in audio. So like, I really didn't care at all about the visual stuff, because, what the hell does this have to do with like recording a band or, getting a good a good guitar sound. But they talked a lot about, headroom and lead room and rule of thirds and Fibonacci sequence and like all of that stuff. And, I took the class, I got my B+ or my A in it, but I didn't really think about it, like it, or even absorb it. I didn't think. But when I finally did start doing photography, like many years later, I already knew all that stuff. So composition and things like that had already kind of been baked into me at a much earlier time. And I owe that class, that one single quarter of a class, to quite a bit of the compositional skills that I was able to start off with.
Amazing. Yeah. All right. So let's fast forward. You're back in Walla Walla. You're recording bands. You got a day job, 9 to 5. You're playing in the metal band inspired by Pantera, kicking ass and taking names. You got the big goatee going on, the beard, and you're a kick-ass drummer. So I'm sure it sounds pretty good. You guys don't get signed. Was that kind of like what you were hoping for? I mean, I do want to jump into... go ahead.
Yeah. So what had actually happened was my son was born.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to jump into. When does Zane come into the picture?
So in 2009, Zane is born. And right like the month and a half after he's born, we get accepted to this huge West Coast Jägermeister tour. So it's a tour of metal bands. It's like a festival going down the West Coast. And my band was accepted to be like on the second stage to that.
Wow.
The downside is I would have to quit my day job and leave my newborn son at home for like 3 months while we're on the road. And I was like, I can't do that. There's like no way I can do that. I'm not going to leave my kid that was just born. And plus, like, the guys I'm in a band with, like, keeping them out of jail, it is the hardest part of the band because it's like my hardest role in the band because they're just all a bunch of, losers essentially. And so like trying to, bet on my future based on, these guys that are
Their
just
behavior.
total wrecks. Like I was like, there's no way I can do that. And when I realized that I wasn't willing to take that last step to actually become a full-time professional musician, I was like, well, what do I even play music for? Like, if I'm not willing to take it to that last step, then why do it at all?
Yeah.
And I just pretty much just quit playing music because it was like, if I'm not going to do it all the way, what's the point?
Did
So I just
they
stopped.
did they go on that tour?
No, nope, they didn't because they didn't have a drummer. So
Crazy. All
they
right. So
ended up replacing me, and we found another drummer, but they never really had a lot of success for a lot of the reasons that I suspected. Like they couldn't stay out of trouble long enough. So in hindsight, like it's an obvious decision to make, but in the heat of the moment when like you have this guy that, had been hoping and dreaming of being a professional musician all of his life, and he finally gets that opportunity. But in order to do it, he has to leave his newborn son at home. I'm like, I just couldn't do that. And so I didn't.
how old were you?
Uh, 29, I guess at that point.
You were 29 when Zane was born.
Yep.
And tell me a little bit about how you met Zane's mom.
She was a concert goer. So I think I met her at one of our concerts. So she was not a groupie, but she
Sounds
was,
like it.
she was a metal chick, had a metal
Yeah.
band and yeah, that was probably how I met her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And
And
she's
that
also
was,
from Walla Walla, or was she a traveling
yeah.
groupie?
No, she was from Walla Walla and we had music in common, I guess. Yeah, they were not all decisions are good ones.
So it's a crazy time. I mean, your bandmates are staying out of prison,
Yep.
probably drinking a
Yep.
lot, partying,
And it was
smoking.
about I'm 29 and you would think that at that age you start looking at your life and being like, it's time to grow up a little bit, maybe. Like some people do, some people don't.
Well,
I
a kid is a good way to wake
absolutely.
up those
It,
senses.
suddenly your life is no longer about yourself. It's about
Absolutely.
being a supportive part of this person's life.
Yeah, and I know that Zane is a massive part of your life and who you are now,
Oh, absolutely.
and we've
Yeah.
talked a lot about that. So I do want to sort of hold fast on this subject for a moment because
Sure.
you're 29, your son's born, he's a month and a half. I have a 5-month-old daughter right now, so I can definitely relate.
Yeah.
And you got this opportunity, you say no, which is obviously the right decision. You quit the band. What happens next? Like, what are you with Zane for the next year? Do you move in with
Yeah.
his
So like
mom?
me and his mom stayed together until Zane was roughly 3 years old, something like that.
You're living together?
Actually, no, it wasn't even that long. I think we were together for another 2 years after he was born, something like that. We split up when he was quite young, and again, some people grow up, some people don't. I grew up pretty quickly after he was born, and not everybody else did. Um,
Were you
yeah.
guys living together at the time
Yep. Yep.
in Walla Walla?
Yeah. In Dayton, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then so because of certain situations, he lived with me full time, and then saw his mom on the weekends, and that was kind of life for quite a while.
So you had
Somewhere in
custody
this, yeah. So I had full custody,
as
and
a single dad
yeah,
with
which is pretty rare.
with like a
Which is
2-year-old.
pretty rare. Yeah,
Yeah, that's extremely
and
rare.
working full
Unfortunately.
time as a golf course greenskeeper. So somewhere in that timeline, I become a golf course greenskeeper, and I did that. By the end, I did it for like a decade, so 10 years. I don't know when it starts and when it ends, but uh, because of my background with golf, like golf course greenskeeping came naturally to me, and it was just working at the tiny little golf course in Dayton. I thought I had the best job because I worked outside all day, listened to audiobooks and It didn't require any
Just drive it
thinking
around.
whatsoever. Just mow my straight lines, listen to audiobooks, and spend all day outside. So
Yeah. For those who don't know, Nick is a fantastic golfer. Very good. I would even say scratch golfer, right?
yeah, well, I'm right now. I'm a 2 handicap.
A
So at my
two.
best, I'm scratch.
Yeah. So scratch golfer,
At
guys,
my
is where,
worst, Peter Gordon beats me
yeah, in Ireland. He's got home
in
turf
Ireland.
advantage.
S-
But yeah,
Sleep deprived. I was jet lagged. It was
yeah.
a dark time.
You're making excuses. So Nick just got beat twice by Peter Gordon in Ireland at golf, which he was not upset
And
happy
he got
about.
me. He beat me. So of the times when we played together, he's beat me twice, 3 times, and I beat him 4 times.
All right, so you
So,
got the upper hand. Yeah.
yeah, I
And
mean,
jet lag is a great excuse. So
he and I both know who the better golfer is. That's
ooh, ooh, ouch. Anyway, so for those who don't know what a scratch golfer is, if you can play any course in the world and play around par, that
yeah,
is that's known as a scratch golfer, which is extremely good. Let's be honest. That's like you're very, very good at golf. So if you guys didn't know that, little tidbit of information here on the
yeah.
TRVL Travel Photography Podcast. So you're working as a greenskeeper, raising your boy. Where does photography come into this? And what year are we looking at, more or
Yeah,
less? Are
dude.
they like
You notice we're
2015?
most of the way through my damn life when we haven't even mentioned photography. It's because I never picked up my first camera till I was how old? 33.
Wow.
So the year is 2013, and I injured my back for the second time at my job. And for those that don't, so I herniated a disc in my back, which can be a bad thing, but I also have something called stenosis of the spinal column, which means that I have a very narrow spinal column. So when I had that herniated disc, the inflammation was way, way worse than it is for the average person, which meant I was completely bedridden. So I herniated disc in my back, and I was just in absolute agony. I was bedridden, couldn't even stand up without getting a rush of nerve pain so extreme that I would literally black out. So I had to like walk around with a walker, and I had to let my son go live with his mom, which is a huge deal. You know, at this time he would have been what, 3.5, 4,
Mhm.
and it was just a really tough time. And I was told after going to the doctor that it was going to be a month and a half before I could have the back surgery that I needed. So I was looking at a month and a half of just agony and being stuck on the couch all day. Couldn't even feed myself. I had to have people come make meals for me and stuff. And so it was at this time that I was like, I just have to do something with my brain or else I'm going to fucking kill myself. Like it was really, really bad. I was in a really dark place. And so that thing that I happened to decide to learn was like, you know what, I'm kind of interested in videography and photography. I'll just start watching tutorials on YouTube. And I didn't own a camera of any kind, but I was kind of interested in videography because I had like some friend at the time that was like into making little amateur films and stuff. And I was like, whatever, I'll just learn it. And so I started watching photography tutorials all day, every day during that time that I was bedridden. Rather than watching endless amounts of television, I just decided to learn something because it would actually occupy my brain more. And so for a month and a half, I just consumed every single YouTube video about the exposure triangle and composition. And it's mostly videography centered, but a little bit was photography as well. And ended up having my back surgery. I get my first camera as a Canon Rebel T3i, and my back starts to get a little better, and I start off taking pictures of Zane, and I realize, oh, taking photos is kind of fun too. I can use it for that. And pretty soon the neighbor wanted pictures of their kid because they saw pictures of Zane on Facebook. And so that turned into like me getting my very first little photo gig. And then pretty soon, within like a month or two of having a camera, like I had a friend get married and I shot their wedding, and it just kind of snowballed like this, where in my tiny little town where I knew everybody, it was really easy to start to become known as Nick the photographer guy, because everybody knew me and they saw my pictures on Facebook, and it just snowballed like that, where within a year of having that camera and doing little photo gigs on the weekend, I was making more money doing those photo gigs on Saturday and Sunday than I was all week at my day job at doing golf course greenskeeping. And so within a year, I had reached a point where like I was already overtaking my normal amount of income just with those little photo gigs. And at this time I was shooting like sports for the local newspaper and real estate for the local real estate agencies and bottle shots for the wineries and weddings and families and like senior portraits and just everything you can imagine I did back then. Everything except for like landscape and nature, because I've like, how do you make money with that? I don't know.
Yeah. Good question. Actually, we're still trying to find the answer to that question, Nick.
Right. I'm not sure it's possible.
That little Canon, the Rebel, was crop sensor. Did you have the kit lens, just like the 18 to 55?
Well, because I had already watched a month and a half of tutorials, I knew that I wanted a nifty 50, because everybody's got to have a nifty 50.
1.8.
And then I had like a little Sigma 10 to 22 millimeter
wide angle,
super wide. Yeah. And like right from the beginning, I knew how to shoot in manual. I never once shot in anything other than manual.
Wow.
Like I got my first camera, switched it into manual, and I never went anywhere else, because I just spent a month and a half watching exposure triangle tutorials. So like I knew all that shit, and like got my first flash, and I was like doing off-camera flash from the very first moment that I ever got a camera, because I had like started with that little knowledge base of like how to do that stuff.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's a great story. And I think that's good timing too. There was a bit of a flood into the photography market, especially with weddings, where people thought that they could just get a camera and then charge $5,000 for a wedding, like the next weekend. And I
will say that I was not that person, because growing up poor, the one thing that I really struggled to wrap my head around was that this super easy job was worth much, because I had done real hard manual labor jobs all of my life, working at like lumber yards, stocking roofs with shingles and delivering sheetrock and like loading 4x4s into trucks and stuff. So I had done all these like labor jobs all my life, and then somebody hands me this cute little camera and tells me that my time is now worth $300 an hour. I'm like, the hell it is, dude. You hit a button. Like this is not work. The person over there with a jackhammer, that guy's doing work. And there's no way that guy makes $20 an hour and I make $300 an hour hitting this stupid little button. And it took me a long time to see it that way, to see that like, the photography was worth more because of the artistic value in it, even though it's a physically easy job. The other thing that I got really addicted to with photography was that for the first time in my life, I directly benefited from that obsessive personality. So like when you're in a band, right, and you want to get better and you want to hurry up and get better, you can practice, and you can be the best drummer in the world. But if the rest of the band sucks or is lazy, like you're not going to go anywhere or do anything. But with photography, the better I got, I was the one benefiting from it. And the more I worked, I was the one benefit. And there was like no limit to how fast I could get better, because, there's no physical limitations to it. It's like, you don't have to be strong or fast or smart to be a good photographer. You just have to put in your time. And so like for years, I didn't watch television. I just binge watched photography tutorials. And like, I would tuck Zane into bed and I would just like consume tutorials. And that's how, like, in that very short amount of time, I went from some dude that didn't know anything about photography to a year later, I quit my day job and was like a full-time photographer, still, not with the same camera, but still like only a year later. And within like 2 years after that, I was, teaching at things like one of my first speaking gigs was in Chicago. I got invited to the Out of Chicago Portrait Conference, and I was teaching dramatic off-camera flash in Chicago. And here I'm this little town kid, been doing photography for 3 years, and I'm like teaching in Chicago about how to do off-camera flash. And I met Lindsay Adler and all these crazy people. I'm like, what is this? I'm just a small town, poor kid, and I'm getting to do this cool shit.
It's a great story. That's what it is. Dedication, a craft, mastering your craft. I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but that's what it is. It's inspiring. It's incredibly inspiring. And it shows that YouTube University exists, and
Absolutely.
You can learn as much as you want. I could learn how to build a sauna in this fucking room if I wanted to. It's amazing.
You could probably get it done before the weekend's over.
But it's we have all this information at our fingertips.
Yeah.
It shows that side of your personality where you really wanted to learn something, and when you were injured and you picked up the camera and started getting some great shots, you share them and people are like, hey, we want that too. So this is all happening around Dayton. So tell me, what got you though to the eyes of Out of Chicago? How did they start to know about you? Because I think a lot of people struggle with marketing, and a big part of your story is YouTube, post-processing, the Landscape Photography Podcast. So how did you become a bit of a social influencer? How did Out of Chicago find out about you?
Honestly, podcasting was one of the first ways. So again, it's kind of lucky timing, but in that time frame, podcasts were really blowing up. And one of the first ever photo trips that I ever did, there was this one particular photography podcast that I listened to called the Improved Photography Podcast. They put together this meetup on the Southern Oregon coast. And it was 3 days of just hanging out with other listeners of the show and going out and doing shoots. And I was like, that sounds kind of fun. I'm going to go do that. And so I drive down to Gold Beach, Oregon, which is a place that I now lead photo workshops at. And down there, I met a whole bunch of people that listened to the show. We stayed in this big hotel, and we had these little meetups where they would have one guy come in and talk about how to clean a tripod, or just random little presentations. And they asked if anybody had anything that they wanted to talk about. And I was like, oh, I'll talk about off-camera flash. And so I got up in front of this group of 40 or 50 other people and did these little off-camera flash demonstrations. And we went and shot for the rest of the couple days. And then afterwards, the guy that put the whole thing together and was the host of the Improved Photography Podcast, he said, I'm getting ready to start a couple of other little podcasts. Would you be interested in being on one? And I was like, sure. And because I put myself out there and was brave enough to do this little presentation, I got invited to basically get into podcasting with this little podcast group. And so then I started doing the podcasting thing, and my background in audio kind of came in handy because I have a microphone and I know how all this stuff works. And I started podcasting, and because I was podcasting, it made me brave enough to start a YouTube channel around that time. So as I would buy a pair of winter gloves for photography, and I would do a little review on them on my little YouTube channel. And I started doing little post-processing tips in video form, and because I had consumed so much YouTube content, I've probably consumed more than most humans. I had a lot of really strong opinions of what makes a good YouTube video. So in the beginning, I started to try to implement that stuff, and it was my way of kind of paying back because I was so interested in YouTube videos. It made sense for me to eventually start to create them.
You learn so much. It's I think I can do this as well.
Exactly.
So, yeah, very interesting. And when did you start your YouTube channel?
I would say 2014, something like that. 2014, maybe. Yeah, and the first ones were really like some of them were like how to retouch a portrait and like
In
uh,
Photoshop though?
in Photoshop, yeah.
So,
And I did like, oh, I'm going to, where was I going? To Yellowstone. Here's what I have in my camera bag, and like little simple things. And I didn't do my first in the field video until probably a year and a half later. And I did my first like filming and outing video where like my wife actually helped me. Annalise was out filming me and stuff. And it was so cringy. I'm pretty sure I
oh
took
yeah,
that down.
the first videos are always
Oh,
the
it's
worst though. Like
so bad.
it's almost like trial and error for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'll
And
probably
and
look back
learning
at
how
these.
to talk to a camera.
Yeah,
Like,
true.
because the first time you ever, especially back then, I don't know why people have gotten
Vlogging,
better about it. Well, I
vlogging in
didn't start
public.
that, but with the whole like, hey guys, Nick Page here. And today, it's just, oh, God, it's
Cringe.
so cringy. Gotta take that
Yeah.
shit down.
Well, no, you don't. But we can get into that as well. So, yeah, tell me about Annalise, because obviously you've been married for quite a while now. I know that
Yeah.
she's a photographer as well. She's super creative, an
Yeah.
amazing personality. So, is she from Walla Walla? Like, what? How did you
Yeah.
guys
She's,
meet?
she's from Walla Walla. And we met because she hired me as her photographer when she was doing henna art. So she used to do henna art, and she would basically, to market her little henna business, she would get together with like three models, do a bunch of henna on them, and then hire a photographer to take pictures, and then she'd use the photos. And so she hired me to do her photography for her,
Yeah.
and that was how we met. I was doing portraits of her female models, Nick Page doing female model work, kind of hard to picture, right? And she liked me because I wasn't a creeper. So
Yeah, that's
there's that.
that's a good
So
thing.
at least Nick Page, not a creeper.
Yeah, yeah. You got,
You
you
heard it
got,
here first.
you already had your groupie experience. Um,
Right.
so,
And so at the time, she was like a barista at a coffee shop and doing henna art. And when her and I first started dating, I basically handed her a camera. I put it in manual and I took her to a wedding. And I was like, all right, you're my second shooter today. If you get photos, great. If you don't get any good photos, they didn't pay for you anyway. And so she just started being my second shooter at weddings and my assistant. And that was how she got into photography, is I basically taught her photography. And now she's, the number one wedding photographer in this area. So it's pretty cool to see how her photography has taken off.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's got a natural talent for it for sure, but she's also learned a lot from you. I remember her telling me about that in Antarctica. So your sort of circle of networking outside of Dayton went into Walla Walla. You're still getting a lot of jobs as a freelance photographer. Tell me about the post-processing stuff. Did you teach yourself Photoshop?
Well, like I said, I purchased every tutorial in existence. So I binge watched, everything from Sean Bagshaw, Ryan Dyer, and Alex Noriega. And ironically, all the same people that I'm friends with now, like, all the people that I used to idolize and look up to, I'm like friends with now, which is really crazy. But it started off by me just literally watching every tutorial in existence. And that was my idea of a good Friday night, is just like learning a new Photoshop trick. And because of that, I learned it really fast. The thing that like I used to be more true than it is for me now is that like I felt like most people just waste their life away. They they watch so much television, or they play so many video games, or there's always that time suck of some kind that most people fall into as their form of escapism, where they go and they watch football or whatever it is, and they just turn their brain off. And for like 3 or 4 years, I just did away with that whole element of my life. And every spare second I poured into like learning or getting better at something or practicing or something.
Mhm.
So, at every given down moment that I had, I was either out taking photos or I was watching tutorials or I was practicing post processing. And it's incredible how fast you can get better at something if you just do that. But most people don't.
Yeah, I mean, you just said it, right? Like this is like 3 years from picking up a crop sensor, Canon
Yeah.
digital camera to doing a speaking event out of Chicago. So
Yeah.
you start the YouTube channel, things start to kick off, excuse me. Tell me about the podcast because it also started to kick off. Is that right?
Yeah. So I started on the Improved Photography podcast and on a podcast called Portrait Session and on a podcast called Tripod, which was my first landscape photography podcast. And eventually those three kind of went away because, the guy that ran it was basically he was just after money and it wasn't making money. So he was like, we're just going to disband it. So it was about that time I started my own podcast called the Landscape Photography Podcast. And I did it for a long time. I never had a very consistent release schedule, which was probably its biggest downside. But the upside was that I don't know what was the upside. Mostly, I did it when I felt like it, and because I felt like doing one, like I felt like they were better. But you can always tell when someone is doing something just to meet a schedule because it's kind of soulless. But if it's done when the person is actually inspired to create, it's always better. And so always try to just release it when I felt like it rather than like trying to meet that every Wednesday, check mark. Because I find that when you try to put a creative person in a box like that, the creativity goes away.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you've started the YouTube channel and you're uploading videos. When did YouTube start to take off for you? Was it like 2015, 2016?
Nah, I would say later. It was probably 17. Like, honestly, it was once I finally figured out, like, what is this YouTube channel even about? Like, in the beginning, it was about everything because that's what I was shooting.
Mm-hmm.
But as I became more of a landscape photography centric person, YouTube channel reflected that, and I actually started to gain an audience. And so there was kind of this nice synergy between I had a landscape photography oriented YouTube channel, a landscape photography oriented podcast, and I was starting to do mostly landscape photography. So like my social medias were they were all sharing the same thing rather than like someone getting into my YouTube channel and thinking they found the wrong person because there's a bunch of portrait shit on here. Like, that's not Nick Page. Nick Page does this. So the synergy of everything being kind of cohesive, that was when it took off. And then like when I first started doing YouTube content with other creators, that was when it really blew up.
Mm-hmm. And when did the Photoshop tutorials come in? Because I remember seeing them pretty early, like maybe 2018.
Yeah. Like even back in way before that even, I started off creating YouTube videos for that Improved Photography brand.
Mm-hmm.
It was the same people that I was doing podcasts for. They also had like a tutorial subscription model kind of thing, and I was creating videos for them. And they would just pay me a flat rate. I would create the video, and then they would take in all of the money from the subscription model. And it wasn't until I got a little bit more popular that I realized, oh, wait, I'm actually getting really screwed over here because they're making bank off of me. Mm-hmm. And so eventually I started releasing my own tutorials. And the very first time I did that, I realized just how much money I had been like giving away by basically giving away my knowledge and my voice. So it was, God, I don't know, 2016 or 17 when I started selling my own tutorials, I think. Okay. And that was when I kind of became Nick the Photoshop guy.
Yeah, because that's how I found you for sure. Would have been like 2017, around the same time that I found Thomas Heaton. I was working down in Patagonia, and at the time I didn't really know much about the whole photography YouTube scene, but I think I found you as like, yeah, Nick, the post-processing Photoshop guy, amazing landscape photography, you know, and and did you just sort of ride that wave for a few years? Or, I mean, tell me, like, when did you stop doing the contract, like freelance work, and then just switch to full-time, like tutorials and YouTube and speaking gigs?
I mean, it was like, it was probably 2016 when I was really phasing everything out, except for like I led my first photo workshop in 2016, I think.
Weren't you
Maybe.
shooting sports too, like football?
Oh yeah, dude. There for a while. I was not only shooting for the local newspaper, but sometimes I would get signed on by like a college team to go photograph their championship game. I had a contact in the NFL where I would get to go photograph one game a year to, for a while, it was the New Orleans Saints where I'd fly down to New Orleans and photograph a Saints game. Shot a lot of, I love shooting sports, but I think it was 2016 that I led my first photo workshop, and that was like just in my local area in the Palouse. And that was my first solo one. But this came actually after I was asked to, again, for that brand and proof photography, they asked me to co-lead a workshop first in Iceland and in that same year in China. And those were the first two international places I ever went. Like I'd never had a passport before. I had never even been to Canada, which is only like a 3-hour drive to the north. I'd never been anywhere. And then in my first year, I go to Iceland and China. So here's little small town Nick going to China, trying to teach a photo workshop, which he had never done either before.
Yeah,
And
I wasn't sure when we were going to jump onto that subject because this is a travel photography podcast. And funny enough, the last episode, Shane Bloom was kind of similar. He didn't travel like internationally till he was in like his late 20s.
yeah,
But yeah, so you're what, late 30s by this time? Like
yeah, I would
36,
have been,
37?
God, I don't know. How old? 36, I guess.
Sorry
Yeah.
to put a marker on it, but yeah, so
Yeah, I
you're
know.
36, you don't have a passport, you've never been to Canada, which I do take offense to naturally.
Right.
Yeah, but
Yeah. And so we go to Iceland, and the very first trip was Iceland, and it was so exciting to get to travel anywhere, but especially to be paid to travel. Granted, I wasn't paid like hardly anything, um, but it was also a really valuable lesson in how not to lead a photo workshop because
ooh,
it was just a shit show from start to finish. And like the guy putting the thing on, like literally ditched his clients like halfway through the trip and left the clients to figure out what they were going to shoot. And like it was just the absolute worst trip, but it was a great learning experience. And it was my very first time ever traveling internationally.
yeah, and Iceland
And
is awesome, bro. Like the first place
oh
you went
yeah,
was Iceland. I mean, it's like one of the
yeah,
most photogenic countries on earth.
yeah. And it was a different Iceland that you see today too.
No,
Like
man, I went the first time in
2016.
2010, bro. I went the first time in 2010.
Wow,
Yeah.
very different. I bet.
Very, very different. It was
A
when
time before full parking lots and buses in every
yeah, I
parking
mean,
lot. And
I even at the time I had a point and shoot camera at the time, and I wasn't editing my photos, and the photos are awesome still, you know. But yeah, yeah, no, you're right. It was a different Iceland, but also a good transition into the travel photography part of this podcast because you know, since then you've been to Patagonia, Antarctica, Faroe Islands, Ireland, obviously,
yeah,
yeah, Iceland. So tell me a little bit about yeah, that so Iceland's a bit of a shit show. You learn how to not run a workshop.
yeah.
Did you then
And
go
then we
straight
go
to
to China.
China? Yeah. Tell me
Yep.
about China.
And that was different because we had guides that were there kind of doing all the things that our guy was not gonna be capable of doing. We went to Guilin, where that's where you have like the cormorant fishermen and the beautiful Lee River and you know, the long G rice terraces and stuff, and just an incredible experience. And you want to talk about culture shock? Holy cow! Like I had never felt more out of place in my life. The funniest part of that whole trip was that when I first got there, myself and my friend Brian, we were walking the streets of Guilin where nobody speaks English. And all of these little women kept wanting to have their photos taken with me. And so they would come up to me and they'd ask, like, pantomime and say, "Oh, can we take a photo?" And I'll be like, "Of course." And the reason they wanted to take a photo with me is because they'd never seen a fat guy before. And so they would pose with me, and right before the photo would be snapped, I would feel a hand come in and go on my belly.
Like a little bit of it.
And so I took like 50 maternity photos on that trip because they all wanted a picture with their hand on the belly of the big fat guy. It was just a crazy, crazy trip, but it's such a beautiful place. And in that particular trip, I got to see how a good photo workshop is done. Because it was ran by Andy and Mia Beals, who are just really, really excellent guides, and they had multiple interpreters, and they were just so awesome at the organizational aspect. So before I ever led my own, I got to see both a really good one and a really bad one, and I think that was really valuable. I still had lots of learning curve ahead of me, but it was still really cool.
Yeah, I actually spoke with Mia, by the way. So
nice.
She was very happy to hear from you because the contact came through you. It's so a long time ago, but people remember. So you get back to the US, you've had a crazy cultural shock experience. And we're talking like, 2016. So your channel's taking off. Is this when you kind of transition then into leading more workshops and like looking to do more things abroad? Is this where your travel started?
Like, at this time, I was probably still shooting weddings, but I wasn't marketing them as heavily. It was more the financial backbone to everything I did, because anybody that's photographed weddings knows that that's a really hard amount of income to replace and to just give up on, because especially once you develop a little name for yourself, like I was probably shooting 28, 30 weddings a year.
That's great.
And that's a lot of income to just be like, "Oh, I don't need that." I did need that. So I just slowly, the first year I might have led 2 Palouse workshops and like 1 little post-processing thing. And then the success of that made me brave enough to lead 2 the next year. Plus, like, me and a friend started teaching on the Oregon coast the following year. And then I just slowly started to teach. As I taught more, it allowed me to do portrait work less. And I slowly was able to replace this income with the more educational income.
So
where does a slow transition?
Yeah, where did the travel bug kind of come in again then? So it sounds like you're slowly transitioning just in your own kind of neighborhood. Yeah. You go to the coast, which isn't too far away from where you live. What was the next international trip for you?
Well, that's the thing about, like, when you're doing workshops or when you become known for an area, it makes it so much easier to just kind of carve out a rut for yourself. Like, you do it once and then it makes it easy to just do it again. Mm-hmm. And so Iceland became the main place that I taught outside of the US for the next few years. Eventually, I did it several times before meeting Thor. And then once I met Thor, our mutual friend, I kept leading with him in the following years. But it was Iceland for quite a while. And then after Iceland,
you went to the Faroes with Thor, right?
Yeah. No, that was with Mads Peter Iverson.
Oh, okay. Excuse me.
Yeah. So me and Mads, we taught in the Faroe Islands for a couple years. We would do back-to-backs there. Yeah. And then Patagonia was with Thor. Antarctica was with you. Mm-hmm. Got to do the Photo Pills camp in Menorca, Spain, which is very beautiful. Yeah.
And you were just in Ireland as well.
Yeah, and I was just in Ireland with Peter Gordon.
Wait, was that your first time to Ireland?
No, I had taught once in Ireland before. That was like a mixture of the Royal Photographic Society of Northern Ireland. That's a mouthful. Asked me to come do a talk, and I was like, yeah, I could maybe do that. And then I was like, well, maybe if I could tie together like a little post talk workshop. And then so we did a Northern Ireland workshop then as well. And that was back in 2018, right? Yeah, 2018, something like that.
So tell me about like that whole inspiration then. Like what was it that got you out of the Palouse and just shooting Oregon coast all the time to go back to Iceland to meet Thor, to work
Well,
with Mass? What was the inspiration behind that?
I mean, a big part of it for me is that like I didn't go anywhere until I was older. And so like, it in my younger life, it never even occurred to me that I could ever travel places because nobody in my family ever had. Like literally, I didn't see the ocean when I only lived 4.5 hours from it. I didn't see the ocean for the first time until my mid 20s. Just because, like, when you don't have money, you don't travel because that's just frivolous expenditure that is not in the budget. And it wasn't until photography that I started not only having a reason to go and like a justification for going, but it wasn't until then that I actually started to daydream about it. And so once I got to actually travel a little bit, I found myself constantly daydreaming about, God, I wonder what that place is like. And I wonder what this place is like. And like, well, what does a ticket cost to go there? And like, and it just kind of opens the floodgates of curiosity, I guess. So for me, it's curiosity and wanting to see something that I've never seen and that it never even occurred to me to look for. Like, I enjoy going to places that are completely different than where I'm from. I'm from rolling hills of agriculture. So I find myself really drawn to rugged coastlines and dramatic mountains and things that we just don't have at home, things that don't remind me of home. And yeah, and it was really the first couple times I traveled that opened up the floodgates of like wondering what these places were like. And plus I'm a little bit of a history nerd where I've always been fascinated by medieval history and ancient history and ancient Rome and all of that. And so I go on these kind of research kicks where, like, when we went to Antarctica, I just started binge reading all of these cool old Age of Exploration novels and stuff. And then when we were in Antarctica, my favorite person on that whole ship was Paul,
The historian.
he's like, yeah, he's the historian, but he's also an adventurer, and he is just the coolest guy you can imagine. And so, like, one of the questions is, I asked him, like, the cool part of these trips is that you just get to like sit at the bar next to the historian and be like, so give me a list of movies and books that I need to read. And so he gave me this list, and I've just been binge reading them ever since. Like, that was a wealth of knowledge just in that. But to me, it's just all about I want to see a bunch of really cool shit before I die. Because someday, like it or not, all of us are going to die. And we're all going to wish that we would have done more than we did. And it's up to us during these years when we can actually do some of this stuff to do as much of those things that we wish that we would have done. When we're on our deathbed, we're going to look back at these years and wish that we would have done more. So let's try not to let down that future version of ourselves and try to do something exciting and memorable with the time that we're given.
Yeah, make the most of the moment.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think a lot of people listening to this can definitely relate to that curiosity and that inspiration to go and see new places.
Yeah.
I definitely can. I mean, you're getting me stoked about a couple new countries that I'm going to visit next year that I'm really excited about.
And something I didn't really touch on is that, like, granted, the back injury like had the added benefit of like giving me time to work on a craft. But what I didn't really mention is that it also gave me this incredible sense of mortality. Something we didn't touch on is that a year before Zane was born, I had a stillborn daughter. It was that they almost actually share the same birthday. Zane's birthday is 8/29/09, and her birthday is 8/28/08. So literally a year and 1 day apart. and her name was Zelma. And we went in for the last ultrasound before, it was like the 8-month checkup, and there was no heartbeat, and had to deliver her, and literally held my dead child in my arms for a night before they took her away. And the combination of that and a really serious back injury where my life was just pain, like reality just became pain. Like those two things combined completely changed my immature outlook on life to where like I went from thinking everything's always going to be okay and everything's just hunky dory to like realizing that someday my back or my life might one day again become pain, and I'm not going to be able to do the things that I wish that I could do.
Yeah, man.
Someday it's all going to be taken away again. And I made a promise to myself when I started feeling better that I would never say no to an opportunity because I was afraid of it. Because when you're on your deathbed looking back, those are the things you regret. Like saying no to opportunities because you're afraid. In the long term, that shit doesn't matter. Like, there's nothing to be afraid of other than like not actually seizing the day and making the most of every opportunity you're given. So I made that promise to never say no to an opportunity because I was afraid. And I think that was more than anything what changed the trajectory of my life, because I went from just doing what was expected of me, working. I was born poor, I was living poor, and I was doing just a shit job and being happy about it. And from that point on, I started to actually dream and like think about like, well, what could happen if I did this? And what could happen if I poured all this time and effort into myself? And that was more than anything, in my opinion, what changed the trajectory of my life and why I am where I am today. Yeah.
Well, you're 28, 29 when this happens. That's such a powerful story, dude. It's so hard to move on from that. Like a stillborn holding her in your arms.
Yeah.
When you're 28
that
years
shit
old.
will change you. Like there's nothing. And that's the thing is like, once something truly serious happens like that, nothing else can really touch you after that. Like my own death feels, doesn't scare me in when compared to that. Burying your child, that is the hardest thing that anybody could ever possibly go through, which means that it pretty much makes me not afraid of just regular stuff.
Wow.
And
Was her mother also Zane's mother?
Zane's mom, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she was pregnant and gave birth a year later. That's heavy.
Yeah. Literally almost shared the same birthday. So the August 28th is always Zelma's day, and August 29th is always Zane's. Man. It's like pretty crazy.
Thanks for sharing that, man. That's really,
it's something that like not a lot of people share, but a lot of people do share the experience of. A lot of people have been through that.
Oh man, miscarriages especially, they're super much more common than are talked about. I mean, that we've had 2 kids. One is only 5 months old, and we've known a lot of people who have had miscarriages and don't really talk about it. It's not like a public thing. It's really, really common. So that's really hard for people to go through. But the stillborn thing is, a miscarriage is obviously terrible, but when the baby's like 8 months, it's. Sorry, I don't want to dwell on it, but it's a baby. Yeah. I've got a 5-month-old. It's like, it's fucking crazy. Anyway, okay. So I didn't expect that, but
sorry to ruin your podcast.
No, not at all. I hope people listening this far have been listening to the last 10 minutes, because that is some really powerful, inspiring stuff. Like, just amazing. Thank you, man. Like, this is why I wanted to get you on. But let's continue with your story, because that is all shaped who you are today. And I feel like the last 5 years have also kind of shaped who you are today since the pandemic, because we talk about your YouTube channel, we talk about the Landscape Photography Podcast. but those things have kind of gone by the wayside. You're still doing the workshops, but we don't see as much of you on
Yeah.
social media anymore. Do you want to talk about that and at all?
Yeah. I mean, like productivity has slowed down because, like I said, what was really driving me was like this obsession with improvement and getting better and like leveling up. The downside is eventually like those gains start getting smaller and smaller, and then eventually you plateau. And that's just the reality of any endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're left with these much harder to answer questions like, yes, but why do I do it? Shit, I don't know. I never thought about that. I do because honestly, my driving force was just the addiction to improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you stop improving or slow down improving, then you have to you have to come up with other more meaningful, long lasting reasons why you do things.
But you can get those experiences through travel though. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
the trip in Antarctica is a great example.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
okay, yeah, let's keep on this topic though, because we have seen, I think those who are listening to this point, like a pretty significant dip in your content output, especially on
Yep.
YouTube. And is the Landscape Photography Podcast even still a thing?
I mean, I still pay for it. So I'm still paying for the Blueberry subscription and stuff for it. Like with the I would say that the problem with the podcast and the problem with my YouTube output are one and the same. It's that once you've done as many videos and podcasts as I have, hundreds upon hundreds, you start to feel like you're repeating yourself after a while. So I've reached this point where I'm like, how many more times can I talk about ISO 100 f16? Like before I just start to sound like a broken record. And with the podcast, it's a bit more of a difficult nut to crack unless I have more guests. Having more guests definitely takes some of the pressure of coming up with new things, takes that pressure off of me. With YouTube, I think it's one of the reasons that like it kind of changed the type of videos I create. Like I like to make videos that are less about me and more about the experience of what I'm doing. Like that's why I'm doing more of the less talk, more like, I don't know, silent ASMR almost type immersive videos, is that like I've already said all of the same, here are my settings, here's what I'm thinking compositionally. Like you can only say that shit so many times before you just there's no need to say it, because anybody that's been following me for that length of time has heard me say all those things a billion times. And I'm just tired of creating that type of content where it's just the same, because in the end, we're creative people. And if I was a musician, I wouldn't just sit down and write the same song 100 times over and over and over and then record it exactly the same. The music has to evolve to stay inspiring. And for me, like, I'm kind of in that in-between point where like, I've played and performed Freebird a bunch of times. I want to like come up with something different, something new, so it's like creatively fulfilling. And so with YouTube, it's a little bit that where I'm just kind of in this in-between point where I'm trying to find new inspiration for like what to do, because I feel like I've done what I used to do so many times that it doesn't need done again. And some people, and these are the types of YouTube channels that I don't like to watch, they don't care about that because they have a Squarespace ad to fill. People that make their money from YouTube, they have to fulfill those ad requirements. Like every second Wednesday and every fourth Wednesday, there needs to be a Squarespace ad integrated into a video, or else they're not going to pay their mortgage that month.
Mm.
I've never wanted to be that type of YouTube creator. I've always wanted to be the type that like makes a video when he feels like it, but when he feels like it, he actually does a good job. And, I don't always feel like I do a great job, but I definitely don't create videos when I don't feel like it. And I think that's a big thing.
And so have you lost that sort of the drive? You don't feel like it that often?
No, I feel like it. It's just that sometimes it's just really nice to go out and to just be a photographer. Because like I've always considered myself a photographer first that happens to have a YouTube channel. And these days, like when I go out on my photo trips, I kind of just feel like being a photographer. And but at the same time, I still like creating YouTube videos. I just wish that I wasn't in them because I'm getting tired of having to be the one that's like entertaining and exciting and like, you know, sometimes the monkey gets tired of dancing. And I feel like right now I'm a little tired of performing, I guess.
I'm interested to see how you transition then, because
Yeah.
it's been noticeable, and
Yeah.
and we've talked about it a little bit, and I feel like it's kind of unclear as to what the next stage of creativity will be for you. And
Yeah.
obviously, there's a lot of people that are interested. You've got a great following of photographers that want to join you on location. Your workshops are still doing great, and those experiences are amazing, right? To be on location, especially in new locations. But what do you think it is? Do you have any idea? Can you share any insights as to like where you're
Man,
going next?
I for me, I just like when I watch other people's YouTube videos, the kinds of content I really love watching are when the person just shuts up and does something interesting. What I hate the most is when someone stands in front of something like, here's what I think about this, and here's what I think about this. And I'm like, dude, just shut up and do what you're going to do. Carve your wood or, build your fire, whatever it is that you're about to do. You don't have to walk me through it. Just shut up and do it. And that's kind of where I'm at. I want to create videos that are more about just shutting up and doing it. And, like in a YouTube video, most of the time, like all the settings are on the back of the camera. If you need to know the settings, just look, like it's right there in frame. I just like creating content that is immersive, and it's less about the personality and more about the action or the moment or the event or what the activity that they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's a lot, much longer than I thought it was going to be. So for those who are listening, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode with Nick Page. Huge thanks to you, man, for making the time. Really appreciate it. And I think that, there's been a lot that we've learned from this. So I guess to wrap it up, like I want to ask you one final question. You've given a lot of insight to the viewers and the listeners. If you could say, like, what do you think travel photography is as a genre?
That's an open-ended question. I mean, to me, travel photography it's an opportunity to explore the things about the world that we live in that we're curious about. And it's a way of educating ourselves on not only how other cultures are and live and how they function, but also like everything that this tiny little round planet that we live on has to offer. Because so many people, they live in their own little bubble in the world. And I feel like those little bubbles have their merits, but they also have their disadvantages. And I think that the more of the world that we see and actually absorb and acknowledge and learn from, the more well-rounded we are as people.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, that's the best way to end this podcast. So, man, you take care. Happy holidays, and look forward to seeing, where Nick Page goes next. So for everybody listening and watching, thank you so much. And Nick, have a great week.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.